Okay. Welcome to our workshop, Transforming EFL Listening Material. We have created a methodology that material writers and publishers can use to help transform listening material. We hope that people across the world can use these resources in order to help students
Well done. You have succeeded in being so boring that you have bored yourself to sleep. Luke?
I'm really sorry. What happened?
You fell asleep because you were so boring.
I'm very sorry. Should we start again? James, any ideas?
Let me see. How about this?
Pretty good. Have you got anything better? Something a bit more. Perfect, James. Perfect.
Luke, is there a point to all of this?
Indeed there is, James. Try not to be boring if you want people to pay attention to what you're saying or doing. And as I'm sure many of you will agree, this is especially relevant when it comes to teaching. If you capture your students' imagination at the beginning of the lesson, then you'll retain their focus for the rest of it. So, some brief introductions. My name is Luke Vyner. I'm the younger brother. I'm an EFL teacher, a primary school Spanish teacher, and also a materials writer. The mainstay of what I write is created in collaboration with James.
I am James Vyner, the older brother.
James, you promised you weren't going to do that.
I lied.
Well, okay, but just for the sake of the talk, can you introduce yourself?
I am a producer, a writer, and a magician of sound.
Right, cool. Well, anyway, together we run an educational audio production company called Creative Listening. Although you may know us as London Language Experience, as we've just recently changed our name. Today we are representing One Stop English and Macmillan Education to briefly talk about our current online cinematic listening series, A Time to Travel.
We use an original methodology that combines immersive soundscapes, evocative musical scores, and dramatic narratives. From dragons and magic swords to moon landings and rainforests. And with a strong and coherent pedagogical focus, A Time to Travel is an episodic audio adventure.
With links to Macmillan cultural readers, A Time to Travel is an audio series where the listener is transported to England, the USA, China and Brazil, as they time travel with a teenage girl called Amber Adams and meet key historical figures such as Abraham Lincoln, Emmeline Pankhurst, Pele and William Shakespeare. And it sounds like this.
Hi, I'm Amber Adams. Now keep this to yourself, but I've got something amazing to show you. Okay, it's a watch, but it's not just any old watch. Listen to what happens when I touch it. I can use it to travel through time to anywhere I want to go. So, what do you reckon? Are you ready to come on an adventure?
So today we're going to demonstrate the staging process by which we write and design our listening resources. And we'll also be asking a little bit of help from some of the audience. I know there's not that many of you, but there's enough to help out on this next section. So let's begin with a short audio story. I'd like you to listen to the short story, which is about me, and consider the following questions. What do you think the language focus of this lesson is? And what could make the listening more exciting?
It was the morning, and I got on my bike and began cycling to work. I was tired, and I needed a coffee. But I left for work in plenty of time, so I quickly popped into my favourite cafe to buy a cappuccino. I went through the door, and I walked straight towards the counter. A waiter carrying some drinks was moving past me. Suddenly, he slipped over. The drinks spilt all over my shoes. Luckily, I had a pair of work shoes in my bag. And whilst the waiter apologised to me and cleaned up the mess, I changed out of my cycling shoes and into my work shoes. My cycling shoes were now a bit sticky, and unfortunately the drinks had also splashed on my trousers, and I didn't have a spare pair in my bag. After I had changed shoes, I finally got to the counter and ordered my coffee. Surprisingly, the waiter didn't offer me the coffee for free. I thought that was a bit rude, but now I was running late for work and I didn't have time to argue. So I paid for my coffee and walked out of the cafe.
Okay, if there's somebody close to you, discuss what you think the language focus of the lesson was. Maybe someone in front or behind or next to you. I'll give you 30 seconds. Any ideas? It could be lots of things. If you think you know, shout it out. Storytelling. The language focus is storytelling, Henry. Do you not come from a teaching background? The language focus, yeah. Any ideas? Could be past tenses. I thought that would come up. Any other ideas? There were certain words that you can put into a story to make a story a bit more exciting. Adverbs. Yeah, well done, Penny. Yeah, from a teaching background. Yes. It was adverbs, but it could be past tenses. So the language focus for that lesson was about 5 adverbs, which is suddenly, luckily, thankfully, surprisingly, and unfortunately. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to the second stage, which requires a slide, yes. And this is called sound design. And I'm going to ask you for some help. So we have put some sound design already on the same passage, but we'd like you to do a bit as well. So I'm going to hand out, in a minute, I'm going to hand out some mugs, okay? And there's a spoon in the mug. And so 4 people, I'd like you to be stirring your mug, imagining that you're in a cafe. Maybe you're stirring your sugar into your mug or your tea into your mug. And then 4 other people, you're just going to be having a chat like you would in a cafe, a catch-up with a friend perhaps. And when we play it, there's going to be some cues. The first cue is you will hear a door swing open. So if you have the mug, I'd like you to stir your mug. If you're chosen as a chatter, I'd like you to start chatting. Or we'd like you to start, sorry saying I, it's we, it's a talk. It's a duet. It's a duet. The second cue is the waiter, as you've heard, slips over, and the line is a waiter carrying some drinks was moving past me. Suddenly he slipped over, and I'd like you, for those in the cafe, to have a reaction to that waiter slipping over. So you might do, I know, school canteen, like "Hey, idiot," or you might go, "Oh God, are you okay?" It depends how nice you are as a person, or your character. That you've chosen to be. And then the third cue is the door closing, and when you hear that cue, you just go silent, okay? I'm going to ask this lot over here to be volunteers, okay? I'm not going to ask you, I'm just going to tell you. Sorry, it's not too hard. Yeah? Oh, and of course, there is a sort of secret cue at the end. And so listen very carefully, and all audience members can get involved in creating a sound effect, everyone. But you have to listen very carefully. There's a cue that I'm not going to tell you about, okay? It's a secret cue. So enjoy yourselves.
It was the morning, and I got on my bike and began cycling to work. I was tired, and I needed a coffee. But I left for work in plenty of time. So I quickly popped into my favourite cafe to buy a cappuccino. I went through the door and I walked straight towards the counter. A waiter carrying some drinks was moving past me. Suddenly, he slipped over. Ah! The drink spilt all over my shoes. Luckily, I had a pair of work shoes in my bag. And whilst the waiter apologised to me and cleaned up the mess, I changed out of my cycling shoes and into my work shoes. My cycling shoes were now a bit sticky, and unfortunately the drinks had also splashed on my trousers. And I didn't have a spare pair in my bag. After I had changed shoes, I finally got to the counter and ordered my coffee. Surprisingly, the waiter didn't offer me the coffee for free. I thought that was a bit rude, but now I was running late for work and I didn't have time to argue. So I paid for my coffee and walked out of the cafe. Onto the street, where, amazingly, the entire IATEFL crowd from Harrogate 2014 were standing in the road. I was very confused, as half of the crowd were booing, while the other half were clapping and cheering. And I really didn't know why.
If you were one of the people who booed, please feel free to leave. You can stay if you want, but know that you are a bad person.
Okay, we're going to go to stage 3 now, which is called Content Transformation. And this includes new content, full sound design, emotive music, and enhanced acting.
I'd taken off from the airport in London, and there I was, flying my small, single-seater plane over the English countryside. The radio was on, and the weather was good. Conditions for flying were perfect. I was having a great time. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, came a dragon. A huge dragon. It roared at me. And with a large bite of its jaws, it ripped one of the engines off of the plane. Luckily, the second engine was fine, so I could still control the plane. Oh no! Both engines were gone! There was only one thing for it. I'd have to use the ejector seat. I quickly pulled the lever. I was falling, and I tried to open my parachute. I pulled on the strap, but it wouldn't open. I pulled and pulled again. The wind was whistling past my ears. I was about to hit the ground. I pulled one last time, as hard as I could. And thankfully, the parachute opened. I landed heavily in a tree, snapping branches as I fell. Ah! Ow! Ah! 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 Ooh! Ah! Ah! Ow! Ah! Ah! Ooh! Ah! Ooh! Ah! Ooh! And I hit the ground hard. Somehow, I'd survived. I looked around. Surprisingly, I found myself in the middle of the Amazonian rainforest. This isn't England, I thought to myself. The skies darkened, and unfortunately, it started pouring with rain. Well, at least it feels like England, I thought to myself. As the wind began to get stronger, I zipped my jacket up and started walking.
Just noticed you had a book. You had a book with the Amazonian rainforest. We're not promoting that book, but the first episode. You're promoting that book. Oh, really? Yeah. And by the way, I just happen to have this book that you can buy from me. The first episode of A Time to Travel is set in the Amazonian rainforest, so that's the strange link. So as you can see, the same lessons being taught here. It's the same adverbs in each piece of the audio, but the content, the acting, and the sound design can completely reshape and transform the final outcome. So what are the benefits of cinematic listening? Well, it helps establish context. It's uniquely engaging, improves focus. I've been able to trial these lessons that we've done for One Stop as I still teach, and I've seen that it definitely improves focus certainly with teenage learners. Improves comprehension. It helps students retain new language. It captures and exercises the imagination, and often makes the experience authentic. If you close your eyes, sometimes when you're listening to the audio, you feel like you're in the scene. You feel like you're at the place. And of course, it can make the experience fantastical as well, as we've heard in the last piece, a dragon flying through the air. It can be motivating, it's fun, and it's contemporary, which I think is really the really important part of this. Okay, and why? Why cinematic listening? Well, readily available free content and free media surround us and have become part of our lives. And for the younger generation, this is all now second nature. The MTV generation have become grandparents. We are now in a new age at the swipe of a screen. From advertising, through cinema, television, streaming content, to video games. Media production quality and its values have gone through huge changes, and what we used to perceive as standard is no longer standard. And EFL, like any other industry, needs to adapt to these changes and provide content that is relevant to the modern learner.
Just don't be boring.
Exactly, James. So please do have a listen to our work on One Stop English, and please do come and find us afterwards if you have any questions or just fancy a chat about what we do.
And if you have any questions specifically for me, please record, upload, and email. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for coming. That was a bit quicker than we expected. Thanks for coming.